Are you talking shift? We are. It's time for the We're Talking Shift podcast. Now. Here to talk shift, Loree Bischoff. We're Talking Shift.
Hey everyone, it's Loree Bischoff. Welcome to the We're Talking Shift podcast. This is the space where we talk shift because I believe the antidote to feeling stuck is shifting, and that begins with shifting our thinking. Sometimes when we're really stuck, we may have to follow that up by going rogue and making a significant move in our lives. Now, before I tell you what's up for today, I do just want to take a minute to make mention of a change. So if you have been one of our listeners from the beginning, then you might have noticed that my former adorable co-host, Candace Parisi, has been absent from the past few podcasts. So let me just tell you that Candace, being the busy psychic that she is, has several ventures that she's been juggling. And after a lot of deliberation and talking through, decided that she needed to narrow her focus and kind of step away from podcasting, at least for the time being. So I really miss working with her. She's got such a fun personality and a crazy sense of humor. And of course, her amazing intuitive take on things, as I'm sure that you all are missing as well. But hey, I'm going to forge ahead. So today, I'm going to be talking about narcissism with inspirational life coach Eric Casaccio of Now Your Life. Now, Eric specializes in empowerment from narcissistic situations and envisioning your own picture window of life. Eric is also the producer, writer, and director of the acclaimed award-winning films Freak and Narcissist, which are available on several streaming platforms, including Amazon Prime Video. Hello and welcome, Eric. It's not too late to still say Happy New Year, right?
Not at all. Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. It's off to a really, really good start. So, and I'm super excited to talk to you about this topic today. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to say, I think it was so interesting when this subject of narcissistic behavior has come up so much over the last like 2 to 3 years. I don't know. It's like I had never heard much about it before. And then all of a sudden the last like 24 to 36 months, it just keeps popping up all the time. And, I wasn't that familiar with it before. So I started to do some research. And then when I was researching it so I could learn more about it, that's, when I came across you and your website, and I thought, well, this is really interesting. I'm going to have to talk to this guy about this since this is his area of expertise. And then when I was digging in and looking at your, what you were all about, I discovered that you are a former life coach student from the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts in Tempe, which of course is where I originally 10 years ago got my initial life coach certification from. So I thought that was a pretty cool coincidence.
Yeah, that's incredible alignment that we have right there. And when you did reach out to me essentially and told me about it, that was really cool because I really loved Sweeha. I thought, I love the Southwest Institute of the Healing Arts. I thought it was a tremendous experience.
Yeah. It's a pretty special place. Very special. In fact, just a quick blip, I ended up ultimately for a brief period of time going back and becoming one of the life coach instructors there as well. So I got to experience it, from two different positions, which was really special. I love that place. So anyway, I'm delighted though that you're here with us, and I think that this is a subject that a lot of people are really going to want to explore with us today. So that being said, let's start by talking about what made you decide to specialize in the area of narcissism.
Well, ironically, back in 2012, around that time, 2011, 2012, I had a brief romance that I was involved with. And it only happened for a short term, for a few months. And after it all ended, I couldn't understand at the time why I was so devastated over it. Like, I've had two major relationships in my life, and I thought, how could I be with somebody for years upon years upon years and have a healthy ending, and then go through something like this, and then feel completely depleted, like a vampire basically bit my neck, sucked the life out, and just left me there, And when I was going through the what I would call the post-traumatic stress disorder of narcissistic abuse, because that's basically what it is, a friend of mine sat me down and said, Eric, you were involved with somebody that was a narcissist, and he actually described it as a narcissistic sociopath. And I looked at my friend and I said, oh, you know what? That's a little harsh. And he said, Eric, trust me, go online and Google narcissistic abuse and narcissistic personality disorder, and you're going to find everything that you experienced. So I did. I went online, and I found, not only did I find a complete entire list of pretty much a breakdown of what it was like, I also found an entire community of people that have gone through the same exact thing, whether it be a short-term relationship or a full-fledged marriage. And I thought, wow, I'm not alone here. And then, as you know, I did make a movie called Narcissist that screened for over 2.5 years. That's available on Amazon Prime now.
Yes.
That was a tremendous experience. And while I was traveling the film festival circuit, I was meeting tons and tons of people that have gone through narcissistic abuse, that drove to see the movie or happened to be in the audience. And then during one of the Q&As, it was actually in Atlanta, I remember it specifically, somebody said to me, have you ever thought about becoming a psychologist? And I said, oh no, I don't want to be a psychologist. That's never been on my plate ever. Then somebody said, what about a life coach that actually helps people that have gone through something like this? And at the time, I'm like, well, that would be kind of cool, because I really love to help people. I think it's sort of an innate ability. And then shortly after that screening, I sat down with somebody one-on-one that was in a narcissistic marriage, and we had a 3-hour conversation. And my set photographer from the movie was with me at the time, and this conversation led to tears. It was just so enlightening, and this just kept happening over and over and over and over again. And then I was in New York at the Big Apple Film Festival at Tribeca Cinema, and I met a life coach that did experience the Southwest Institute of the Healing Arts, and she was the one that told me about that program, because I was kind of loosely looking into other programs, but nothing felt aligned with what I was looking to do. Right. And then when I called the Southwest Institute of the Healing Arts, I thought, wow, this is exactly what I want to do. And the program was beyond transformational, not only for myself, but it just really all the models that you learn and the methods of focusing on where a client is now and moving them forward. I thought, okay, I could really take this whole concept of life coaching and put it into how to move forward from any narcissistic situation, whether it be a working relationship, a family relationship, a friendship, or a romance. Right. And that's how it all came to fruition.
So interesting. So interesting. So, okay. So clearly, you were compelled ultimately to step into this space, due to, the experience that you personally had. And that was something that you had not really, been aware of this type of personality disorder before your relationship either, then it was something new for you.
Well, you know what's really ironic, Loree, is I feel that within a good majority of my life, I was attracting a lot of that energy into my life, and I never knew quite what it was until this happened, And it was a gigantic awakening. It taught me how to be okay with putting up boundaries against these personalities, and knowing just to walk away from them and how to move forward from them, because I never quite understood what it was. I never knew. I always thought of a narcissist as somebody that went to the gym too much, and looked in the mirror, that whole story about Echo and Narcissus, the Greek story.
Yeah.
I always thought, that's what it was. I never knew that there was so much more to it, and there is an entire, it's a whole other thing.
Yes.
Than what I thought it was. And that was the irony of the whole thing, is I got like a full-fledged education by being part of communities like After Narcissistic Abuse. There's Life, Light, and Love. That's a Facebook community that has over 130,000 followers. And, and then getting to meet people that focus specifically on moving forward from narcissistic abuse, like Melanie Tonia Evans, who actually just released an amazing book, and another individual named Kalia LaRoche. I actually found Kalia online. And I remember when I ordered her book, it really, it validated everything that I experienced, and it helped me move on. And I'm gratefully, these two people are friends of mine as well.
Wow.
I met Melanie. Melanie was in Los Angeles when I was living there, and she came out for a while, and we did LA Talk Radio together. And we stayed in touch all these years. If I ever go to Australia, I'm going to spend time with her. And Kalia, I'm in touch with as well. We actually just did a radio show together with LA Talk Radio as well, with the founder of World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day, which is June 1st. We just did the 2-year.
Holy cow! This personality disorder now has a day named after it. That's amazing.
Well, it's not the personality disorder that has a day named after it. It's for people that have gone through narcissistic abuse and an awareness of narcissistic abuse.
Okay.
Because a lot of people don't take narcissistic abuse seriously, and that's something that I feel is finally being justified as something real.
Okay, so let's before we go further, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what the differences between, what would be like normal, healthy narcissism, because there is kind of a scale where there's a level of narcissism that most emotionally healthy people have, but at one end of the scale, there's that normal, healthy aspect, and then there's at the far end of the scale, the pathological, actual disorder, which is, it's a personality disorder, and that the spectrum is pretty broad there. So, I noticed that the term narcissistic personality is thrown about, quite loosely. People use it all the time. And a lot of times they're referring to somebody, that's just displaying a lot of vanity and self-absorption, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have narcissistic personality disorder. Right?
Yes. And, I'm really glad that you brought that up. That's a really good thing to pinpoint. You mentioned a moment ago about healthy narcissism. And yes, there is, first of all, every human being, all of us, even myself, yourself, everybody, we all have a level of narcissism in us, but there is healthy narcissism. And healthy narcissism is, if you accomplish something and you're proud of it,
mm-hmm.
and it's something you say, I won this award. I'm so grateful,
Yeah.
There's a healthy version of narcissism. You know what I'm saying? Us talking on the air right now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But then
it's like based on real achievements, right? Your real achievements, your real successes. That's helping you develop a sense of positive self-regard, right? They're your accomplishments.
Yeah, it's positive self-regard. It's positivity for community. It's positivity for community engagement, and it's also something to be proud of.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being proud of an accomplishment. That's actually a very healthy thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be ashamed of your accomplishments or never talk about them. You want to be happy about them, and you want to share that with people that will appreciate it, that will elevate you like you will elevate them.
Right.
But then there's And then there's, you kind of pinpointed on people that are constantly, I don't know, we'll say, taking selfies of themselves and doing that. And that takes it up another level because, if you're looking to validate yourself by constantly taking pictures of yourself or whatever, there can be something a little off about that to some extent. And that's more of an opinion to me. And maybe I'm just getting older, but if I see somebody that I'm attracted to on the internet and they're constantly posting selfies of themselves that are shirtless, at this age, at 46, I'm not really too drawn to that. I'm more drawn to, do you have kind eyes? Do you have a friendly smile? Are you friendly? I want to. That's more what I'm looking for in my adult life. But now we'll get into, you mentioned narcissistic personality disorder or the pathological disorder.
Right.
Which is a completely different thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So what would you like to know about that?
So let's just talk about, what are some of those common identifiable characteristics of somebody that actually is suffering, shall we say, from NPD or narcissistic personality disorder. It's a mouthful, so let's just say NPD.
Yeah, the word narcissist is always a challenge to say and enunciate purposely. How could I say it?
Right.
Absolutely perfectly is what I should say.
Right.
So it's kind of a tongue twister in its own design, which is kind of interesting because it's very symbolic of a narcissist. But
right.
Anyway, I'll go into the breakdown what it's like to experience a narcissist when you're on the opposite end of one. Normally, a narcissist, when you first meet them, are extraordinarily charming. They will tell you everything you've ever wanted to hear. They make you feel beyond special, like you're the most incredible, amazing person in the world. And we'll go on a romantic sense here.
Yeah. Okay.
And you're basically, you're basically lifted up to this cloud like you were the most amazing person I ever met, and you're the soulmate of my life, and usually the person that gets drawn into this is usually in a very vulnerable state of their lives unconsciously and does not know that they're actually in that space. So they feel like, wow, I am special and I deserve to be loved and I'm lifted up to this cloud and everything feels so amazing and wonderful and perfect. And then as soon as the narcissist knows that they got you, that they have control of you, and your emotions, is when they slowly start to break you down. And it's almost like an Insidious. So they start with, they go from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde. And there's a lot of manipulation, a lot of manipulative mind games, a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of self-projection onto the person that's involved with them. So the person that's involved with them thinks everything is their fault. Like they're not worthy and they're not good enough because they didn't, fold the towel right or, whatever. It could be a million ridiculous things. But when the person that's involved with it starts to pick up on, something isn't really right here, and then starts to talk to them about it, is when the narcissist gets very, very combative. And since they know they're losing control, is when they will usually devalue and discard the person that they're involved with, and make them feel like they're an empty, make them feel horrible, and they're left with this empty, horrible shell to deal with. Whereas the narcissist is already going into another relationship like nothing ever happened, and is just totally, leaving you like that on purpose. And it almost feels like a manipulative tactic that almost feels calculated. And the person that goes through it doesn't understand what they went through, that they don't get it. And they're stuck in this emotional turmoil of having to heal. And they question everything and they go over everything 1,000,001 times, and they're left with this empty, horrible shell to deal with. And that's usually the post-traumatic stress of emotional abuse, because that's basically what it is when you experience it.
Yeah, it's because it seems like gaslighting that that term of gaslighting comes to mind, that they, where they project onto the other person, and the person that's being abused, as you say, is all of a sudden everything is turned on them, and they're made to feel like everything is their fault, and it's been their mistakes, and they're seeing it wrong, and they're hearing it wrong, and so they begin to doubt themselves. Does that sound like the whole process? Once you've gone from, so first you're idealized, right? They've put you up on a pedestal, so you're feeling really good and special, and then they go to devaluing and discarding you. You've been pushed off the pedestal, right? Which is really then when their true personality is coming through, because that initial one is really not the true them, right? The personality that you're seeing when they're idolizing you and making you feel special and putting you up on the pedestal, that's the facade. Is that safe to say?
Oh yeah, that's the perfect word, facade, because it is a facade. It's not real, and that's the hard part, especially on a romantic dynamic, is that you are trying to get back that person that you first met, that made you feel so special, whether it be for a week, a month, a day, or 3 months. You want it, and then you get glimmers of that every now and then, like you'll be broken down, and then you'll get that moment of, here's a carrot,
Yeah.
And everything feels like it's going to be okay, and then all of a sudden it goes back to something else. Mm-hmm. And gaslighting is a huge thing narcissists do, because they know it's a manipulative, emotional, abusive tactic. They know that they know how to break their person down, so they get them to react. So they can say, oh, look, see, you are this person because you're reacting like this, because they basically did all these things to get the person to react. And that comes in many different forms, that kind of reaction. That kind of reaction can come from simply ignoring you in front of a group of people on purpose. To try to make you look bad. They love to do stuff like that. You could be that person. A narcissist does not like it when you decide that you can see right through them and you really don't want anything to do with them anymore, and you just kind of slowly back away. You know what I'm saying? And then if you happen to see that person in real life out in a group setting, and you go to say hi to them, they'll purposely ignore you. They'll turn their heads, they'll walk away, because that's their way of having to have control. Mm-hmm. And they want you to chase them, but don't. In a way, they're doing you a favor. It's like, okay, now you're really showing me the truth.
Yes.
And that's, they do stuff like that because they want you to look bad in front of a group of people. Because
it's like a status thing, right? They're really into hierarchy, and they want to be seen at the top of the hierarchy. They want to have that high status, and so they're very prone to looking for opportunities like that to make sure that you're seen as a lower status.
Oh, yeah, that's what they want. And the reason why is because the narcissist will see something in that other person that they will never be, no matter what they accomplish. Okay? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they don't really, because of that, it's almost like a light and dark thing. That's kind of how I compare it. Mm-hmm. The narcissist is dark, and the person that's usually involved with them is light, and they want to have that light, but they'll never have it because they're not genuinely light. There's no authenticity. It's all about, manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional abuse to them. It's not real, and they see something in the other person that they will never be. And deep down, I really truly believe that bothers them, and they're going to do everything they can to put that person's light out. But it's up to that other person to really have a true educational understanding of this persona and be okay with themselves, to return to their true authentic self, which is what I do in the life coaching process. It's to return to who you are truly, to get out of this toxic thing that all this projection that's been put onto you, to know, okay, this is not the reality of who I am. Remember who you are, and figure out what you can do starting right now to move forward with yourself. Because one of the things I do, and anybody that comes to me for the Empowerment from Narcissistic Situations life coaching program, I have a 20-minute free consultation for both my life coaching programs. I also do general life coaching, which is called the Picture Window of Life. But with the empowerment program, within the 20-minute connection through Skype or Zoom or however the client wants to connect, I basically use that time to go over what the life coaching process is and to answer any questions that they have. But for this specific program, I say to every single person that's considering this is we could sit there and go over the 500 and million and one things that the narcissist did, that the narcissist said, all of it.
Yeah.
Okay? But that isn't what we're going to do in life coaching. That's what therapy is for. We're going to go over what can you do starting right now to move forward. We're going to focus on you now, because it's not about this. These sessions are not about the narcissist. It's about you. And I designed models through the stages of grief, through the stages of trauma, that help the client move forward through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and then the victims, the stages of trauma, which is going from a victim to a survivor, to a thriver, to a server, to an empowered server. And it's imperative to go through these things and really figure out how to move forward. When a client does start with the program, we usually start with a model called Your Story, which I think you're familiar with in Sweetheart. And I basically took that concept, and I really liked the Your Story concept because it gives me the opportunity to collaborate within a safe space connection with the client and get it all out, get their story out, and really talk about, okay, on the pyramid of Your Story, we have the three characters: victim, rescuer, and persecutor. And normally when a client does come into the empowerment program, I ask them, okay, what character or characters do you see yourself as on this pyramid? And I would say most of the time they say I'm between a victim and a rescuer.
Yes.
And then we basically, because usually anybody that gets involved with a narcissist is genuinely a sensitive person, also known as an empath. A lot of empaths get involved with narcissists, and they usually end up being the victim and the rescuer. But our job in the collaborative safe space connection between the client and the coach is to get them to not be a victim anymore. And ultimately, that all breaks down to, I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say this to anybody out there that's listening to this that's ever gone through narcissistic abuse or is going through narcissistic abuse currently, first of all, it is not your fault that that this happened, okay? It's not your fault, so don't blame yourself. But a good question to ask yourself is, what is it about you that may or may have not have attracted this situation into your life? Or what made you attracted to it to begin with?
Yeah.
And what can you do to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yes.
Ultimately, that question is really the big issue. It's not what the narcissist did and said, yes, it's all wrong, it's all abuse, it's all disgusting. I agree 120%. But that question right there is the foundation of focusing on you. And that's why the business is called Now Your Life, because it's focusing on them, you. You know what I'm saying? It's getting them to move forward, because looking backwards isn't going to help.
Right. The only helpful part about that is if you're able to do it and recognize your own behavior and, what you want to do, what you need to change maybe, or what you need to look at deeply within yourself moving forward so that you don't, fall into that same type of situation.
Yes, and I love the way you just said that. That's wonderful, because as you know, when you are coaching people, those aha moments come up, and that through the powerful, potent questions, especially with this particular program, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
They discover what it is about themselves that okay, wow, I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
You know, and then okay, now let's work on that. You know, let's get you to move forward from that. And
Yeah.
how can we move forward from that?
Yeah, exactly. So let's do a quick recap on I just want to make sure that we maybe give some of the most obvious red flags so that people that are wondering, whoa, is that so and so in my life? Is that the person? Is that why I'm feeling this way? Or is that why this relationship is in this place? So let's give a couple of quick bullet points on what really that pathological narcissistic person, what that looks like. I mean, there's a few red flags that are easy to start looking at. Most I have found that people that are that have NPD are very, very defensive people, and they have a tendency to, like, if your opinion or somebody's opinion is different from theirs, and they're challenged, they really act like they're being attacked. They're very defensive. Do you find that that's a red flag that you as well? Is that something?
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. For bullet point purposes, I actually have a list in front of me right now that I will read.
Beautiful.
Would you like to hear that?
Absolutely.
They are very extraordinarily charming.
Mm-hmm.
They lack empathy, manipulative, cunning, pathological lying, secretive, paranoid, self-projecting, need to be adored/worshipped,
Yes.
controlling, always needs to be right, does not perceive there is anything wrong with them, no conscience, scapegoat, incapable of accepting responsibility for anything they do, lack of remorse, shame, or guilt.
Yeah, that pretty well sums it up. I also noticed that it seems like the narcissistic person really likes, for lack of a better term, to have a harem, like a group of adoring people that they get that from, that fills them up with all of that adoration and validation that they are, addicted to receiving from outside of themselves. So it seems like there's always, and if you're somebody that falls out of favor, then you're replaced with the next unsuspecting worshiper.
Yeah, and Loree, in my opinion, that is one of the biggest problems of our entire world right now. And I really think, in my opinion, it all actually starts in high school. Even before I would say around 5th grade, when kids decide who's considered to be popular and not popular.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, the popular person, the one that's king or queen of the crop, is generally a very mean, abusive person that everybody follows and does whatever they say and thinks they're so wonderful and fabulous and and all this stuff, when that person is generally a very abusive, horrible person that does horrible things to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we're in this society where that's where it all starts. And then if you really think about it, even in adult life, when we'll use Harvey Weinstein as an example. For years upon years upon years, I lived in Los Angeles, and a lot of people in Los Angeles knew what that man was doing, and nobody did anything about it until it was exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And think of all the people, all the pain in the world that could have been stopped if somebody did something about that decades ago.
Yeah.
And I feel that is the major issue with is this whole popularity stuff and all that. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, I was bullied a lot as a child, through my early years. And I have to say that was my wound. That was my unconscious wound, is I was still carrying that in my adult life. And I carried it up until probably my late 30s, that wound. Mm-hmm. And, that's the thing is, it all starts in those formative years. And I feel in the educational system, I wish they would bring this up I wish they would start this at a young age so
Right.
kids don't divide like that, because our world is so divided right now, especially with social media being out there. As valuable as social media is, in a lot of senses, it's causing a lot of issues with division, in my opinion. And I find that that's one of the major issues within the realm of narcissistic abuse as well, because people will worship and adore these people and enable them and give them fuel to keep behaving this way. And then everybody thinks it's okay, or they think it's cool, when it's not. It's not okay. It's not cool, and it's not right. And I get very, we talked about being defensive earlier. There's a difference between because every human being has a level of being defensive. Okay, if you have to stand up for yourself, you're going to get a little defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And when something like this comes up, the topic of when I see somebody being ridiculed wrongly, and when somebody's basically being abused and nobody's taking responsibility for it. And I'll use an example. Imagine if you had a son and your son was being bullied in school to the point where he was afraid to go to school, where he was being beaten up and attacked every day, and you took your child into the principal's office to have a meeting, and the principal basically blamed your son for going to school dressed a certain way and didn't do anything about the bullies. I think you would get a little defensive, right?
Well, sure.
So, there's that, and that's the thing is when you mention gaslighting, a lot of narcissists will get an individual to gaslight you like that. So you look like you're the defensive one when it's really them.
Right. Yeah. It's the context is different. There is a time when obviously somebody need to take a stand up for themselves or for somebody else on their behalf. And that's one form that's being demonstrated in a healthy manner, that is to, stop some bad behavior. And then there's the other kind of extreme defensiveness where somebody is so ultra sensitive. They're so hypersensitive. I think that's what it really is. The person with NPD is like a hypersensitive to even minor, what they would consider slights. And so they get very defensive. Whereas somebody with, that's just got a healthy level of self-esteem, or you could say healthy narcissism, wouldn't even notice those minor slights. They don't notice them, or they don't they don't affect them emotionally. But a person with NPD is so hypersensitive to that because they're so focused on status. And you know what I mean by status, right? Being at the top, being considered the at a higher level than, and everyone else is at a lower level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, grandiose self-importance. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, on the polar opposite attraction to a narcissist is generally an empath, and empaths are also very hypersensitive, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
Because an empath is very giving and very loving and will bend over backwards and help somebody. And then when a narcissist is treating them a certain way, their hypersensitivity can get shaken very easily. So they don't understand what they're experiencing or why they're being defensive in the beginning, because they don't know that they're in a narcissistic situation.
Sure.
And what the empath eventually needs to learn is how to not allow that to affect them, because the narcissist knows that if they do this, then he'll react or she'll react this way. And then the empath finally understands, I'm not going to, when they know that they can't control you and they can't upset you and they can't do anything to you anymore, is when they will avoid you, talk terribly about you,
right.
Or just won't have anything to do with you anymore. They'll go and find somebody else that they can do that with and control. And that's, control is never love. Anybody that's trying to control you in any dynamic of your life is not love. It's something to look at, because a relationship, no matter what it is, isn't always about control. Because control to me is ego. And ego is never something that is, in my opinion, a genuine connection. If you're in something for ego, no matter what it is, you have to look at the reasons why. And a narcissist can't do that. They're too afraid to go in because they're afraid what they're really going to see will frighten them.
Fascinating. Yeah, that control thing is big because, if people in a relationship with somebody with NPD doesn't understand that, you can't jump through enough hoops to consistently make that person happy, because you have to show up in a certain way all the time in order for the narcissist to be, to deem you okay, right? And for everything to be okay in the relationship. And the minute you don't show up the way they expect you to show up, shit's going to hit the fan.
Oh yeah, you feel like you're walking on eggshells.
Yes.
You're doing everything to please. It's people pleasing, and they know that you're a people pleaser, so they're going to totally take advantage of that. Ironically, do you remember the more or less tool from Sweeha, from the
Yes.
Institute of the Healing Arts?
Yes.
And do you remember control versus approval? I actually utilize the control versus approval model in my practice as well. I actually have an ebook as well. And basically, I'll read to you the introduction to this coaching tool and how it's utilized. I say, narcissistic personalities are prone to needing consistent control, and this control can bring on an unconscious need for their approval. Unfortunately, this dynamic may encompass worthless and stuck feelings for you. However, your likely sensitive self is by far the furthest thing from being considered worthless. You are more than too good to be true on this earth. Embrace that. And then we go through there's the circles, control and approval, and we go through ways that you need control and ways that you need approval, because unconsciously the empath or the sensitive person that's involved with the narcissist probably didn't even realize that they're by trying to seek approval, they may be doing things for control. You know what I'm saying? Not they're trying to control. They're not controlling like a narcissist is controlling, but unconsciously, by their need for approval, they may be trying to get control. Not in every single sense. And then how to break that down through potent questions and stuff like that.
Right.
Approval can bring on stuff as a need for validation or shame or feeling embarrassed or doing only what others expect or lessening yourself to please others, and all kinds of stuff like that, or fear of losing acceptance or fear of not being loved or fear of others being mad at you, and then people pleasing, or fear of just speaking your truth. And and there's also a lot of difficulty making decisions when you need approval, and you sometimes, in order to get control, sometimes you may make inauthentic compliments to please the narcissist. You know what I'm saying? You may, just to give them a validation, and that's where approval can lead into ways that you may need control or are trying to get control to make everything okay, so you don't lose that person because you think you can't live without that person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, perfect sense. So for you, I'd kind of like to, I think maybe this might be an opportunity to tie this in with my going rogue scenario here. Do you feel like, in order to extricate yourself from your relationship with the narcissist, did you have to, just come to a point where you had to make a radical change? Did you have to do something that by your own standards was kind of going rogue and in order to, get out of the situation and move forward? Or was there a different point in your life that you experienced going rogue, where it had a major impact in your life?
May I answer that question in terms of, I'll answer what made me go rogue in my life, which is actually not related to this.
Yeah, please.
It's something different. But for people that are going through narcissistic abuse, A lot of the things for going rogue for them is going no contact with their narcissist as much as possible. And if you're able to block them everywhere on your phone, on Facebook, every social media outlet, email, everywhere they can get a hold of you, do it. Because that gives you time to heal and move forward. Now, I do understand that every situation is different, and sometimes there's marriages where you have children where there has to be some communication.
Yeah.
So the best things to do there is to evaluate, okay, how can I minimize as much contact with this person as possible? You know, in an example, if you're separating and you don't live together, you know, can you go through a third party contact, or can you go through legal or whatever it is? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To minimize your contact with them as much as possible. So that I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel that's an important thing.
Yeah, it is. But before we move on, I love that. And I think that's a really good point because, you know, going rogue or doing something that's like a radical shift in your life, so that, you know, for every person that's the standard or the bar for that is going to be different. And I think, you know, your point about a lot of times people that are empaths or extremely sensitive people, you know, get paired up with the person that's very narcissistic. And so doing something like, you know, no contact or very minimal contact you really do have to kind of go rogue by your own standards if you're that person in order to get the kind of untangle yourself from the relationship. Is that a fair statement?
That's wonderful. I love the way you worded that. That's great. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So now I want to hear your going rogue story.
Okay. How much time do we have? Anyway, so back in it was January 1st, 2014. I'm going to rewind this just a little bit. The end of 2013, I finished my movie Narcissist. I did the edit, the final cut, getting ready to release the movie. And so I was living in Los Angeles, living in West Hollywood, you know, living the ray of light lifestyle. And I did 19 years in Los Angeles, and they were incredible years. They were. But I had an awakening. I actually was getting ready to cross the street, and I got hit by a car at 40 miles an hour.
Oh, jeez.
It was not my fault. I hit the button. I looked to my left. A kid in the first lane and a bicycle stopped for me. The person in the first lane and a vehicle stopped for me. I looked to my left as I'm getting ready to step into the crosswalk. I go to look unsafe to see my destination, and the person in the second lane hit me, not knowing that they hit me because they weren't paying attention.
Oh.
So without going into all the details, gratefully, because I take care of myself, I healed from the accident within a month, and then my movie was getting ready to premiere, and it premiered at the Boston LGBT Film Festival, and during that period of my life, my father was passing away. So I flew back east. As my movie was premiering, okay, my father was passing away of dementia, and I had my movie premiere, and then I was doing press interviews, and I gotta tell you, it was very hard to be on. I remember having to do 3 radio shows that week when my father was passing away while the movie was premiering. And I did it because I knew the people that donated to this film, to that project, were a good majority of them went through narcissistic abuse. So the joy for me on that film, I realized, wasn't being a filmmaker. It was and both of my films have done this. They're humanity projects, and I enjoy that aspect of it, of creating something, whether it be a film, a life coaching manual, a life coaching business, that brings clarity and awareness to people. I found that is more what I'm about with any creative endeavor that I do, no matter what it is. And I realized that my life in LA and Los Angeles I just didn't feel in alignment. And I never felt alignment there. I do consider myself an empath. And as I'm getting older, I don't like being in big cities. I do not enjoy big crowds. I actually, as much as I've had success in the spotlight, and I definitely am proud of that, it definitely was a great thing, but it wasn't the spotlight that I loved. It was the people that I would have, these one-on-one conversations that I would have with people that have gone through narcissistic abuse or whatever, that I enjoyed more of than, the 700-seat full theater attention, media, blah, blah, blah stuff. And I'm grateful that I've had great, I've been on NBC 6 in the Mix with Roxanne Vargas. I was in the Huffington Post in 2015. I did a radio show that made the Huffington Post, and they did a whole spread, which was fantastic. But for me, as I'm getting older, I realized that my going rogue for me was leaving Los Angeles and moving to St. Petersburg, Florida, living a much simpler life. I think that less is more. And, I'm in the midst of creating more art as well. But it's for me, it's just about messages. It's about having a message and having something to say, and hopefully inspiring other people and creating movement, awareness, and change for others. That's what my work is about. And it was getting hit by a car at 40 miles an hour is what made me look at my surroundings. It made me look at some people that were around me that were not really my friend, that were more in it for an opportunity.
Sure. And,
opportunistic are also another part of being a narcissist. But sometimes people are just opportunistic, and those people, unfortunately, it's hard when you make a friend with somebody and you realize that you were just an opportunity to them until they got what they needed. You were just that bridge to step on and move forward, friend. And then that's a lesson, though. You know what I'm saying? And I went through a lot of lessons in my life. To finally know, okay, this isn't working, and I'm going to put a boundary up here because I don't want to be around this. And, and knowing what works for me and what doesn't. Like, no, I don't want to go to a club till 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night. I really want to go see a theater show instead, because that's more about what I'm into. Just knowing what works for you, and that goes with anything in life, dating, friendships, family, everything. And going rogue with, when I got hit by the vehicle, I felt very I looked around at my life and I thought, I did 19 years here. It's time to move on. I don't want to be here another 20 years. I didn't feel like I was going forward. I just felt very all of my existence was based on the laurels that I was getting. And I didn't feel that as a person, that I was using laurels as validation. Wanting to feel accepted, wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel valued. And you can't go, I just no longer couldn't go on my life based on my accomplishments. That was not healthy. And I really wanted to be more connected to self and to consciousness, and to be around people that are connected to self and consciousness, not, everything else.
Yeah, that's a great going rogue story, because when so many people, the dream is to go where you were and to be in, shall we say, the Hollywood machine. You were in it, and you were, you had all this momentum going, and you actually things culminated with your father and getting hit by a car at 40 miles an hour. It's amazing you even survived that. And you did the opposite. You decided to extricate yourself from that, which is a pretty, that's definitely a going rogue move. And like you said, just move in a different direction. You moved to the other side of the country and had a different focus for what you really wanted. You followed the calling of your heart instead of staying there where you weren't feeling like you were in alignment with what you really were all about.
Yeah, and I like how you use the word extricate, because from that accident, I've learned to extricate relationships that are not working for me very quickly now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't allow myself to stay connected to something that is not healthy. You know, I look at what my part is. How did I allow this into my life again? And then I say no. I back away. I don't argue. I don't engage. I just back away very simply. And a lot of people don't like that. But again, hopefully after backing away, maybe I pray that maybe they'll look at themselves a little bit and ask themselves why. It doesn't mean that it's their fault. They're a bad person. It just means that this isn't working and it's time to move on. You know what I'm saying? And I don't let myself stay in situations like that because I learned that life is short and I want to be in situations. I want to be with people that if I'm going to have people in my life, we're going to elevate one another.
Yes.
I found myself in situations where I'd be putting somebody up on a pedestal that loves to be adored and worshipped and all that. I don't want anybody treating me that way, and I don't want to have to treat somebody that way to have them in my life.
Right.
Because the moment you stop adoring them and worshiping them is when they won't bother with you anymore. And I'm just like, I dealt in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is not a bad place. I did leave in the first year and a half I was gone. I was very like, I never want to go back there again. But now there are things about it. I'm like, wow, you know what? That was 19 years of wisdom. I got to be who I was there. You know what I'm saying? I came out of the closet in Los Angeles. I had my 3 best friends in the entire world that I'm still in touch with. I met there. They're like family to me. We've seen one another go through the best and the worst, and we've always accepted each other in our best and in our worst. You know what I'm saying? And that's when you can count that many people on one hand in your life. That's all you really need.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I think it's, you're in a healthy place when you can look back on things like that and you are in the place where you can truly and sincerely take the best with you and discard the rest. And then you can, to go a step further, you take all of the lessons and the best and the things that your own life experience, and that's what you use to be able to help other people, which is, what you're doing. I am always I'm just always a fan of anybody that is using their experiences to help others and maybe, lessen someone else's suffering in any way. It's a noble thing to follow that calling. I love that. So Eric, actually, I have one more question for you. This has been really an interesting topic, and I'm so glad that you had so many great things to share with people. I think that there's so much good information here, and I want to give you an opportunity now, before I ask you my last question, to let our listeners know where they can find you and your services and everything that you have out in the world that you want to share with them.
Yeah, I'd like to read a meme that I wrote a while ago. I think sometimes when we make mistakes, I think we can get really hard on ourselves, including myself, because I can be very hard on myself sometimes. Yeah. But I wrote this meme a while ago, and this is what it says. Make peace with the mistakes you have made. They are the best education you will ever receive as long as you learn from them and take the appropriate actions to keep moving forward.
Beautiful.
What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah. It's right on. Right on. Exactly. If you can do that, it's good. Very good.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I love that meme. I try to look at it whenever I have moments like that where I find I'm like, oh, here's a situation again. How did I do this? And I'm like, okay, learn from this and move on. And that's what life is. Because life isn't always perfect. Let's face it, and it can be really hard sometimes, and that is a reality to look at and to understand and be okay with. And
the learning is, the lessons and the learning is where you are able to start gaining wisdom. you can't become a wiser person and evolve into that place of having some measure of wisdom without having gone through, uncomfortable situations, and life lessons. And then if you're not going to learn from them, you're not going to really gain any wisdom. If you just, chalk it up to, I was just dealt a crappy hand and that's just life, things suck, it's hard. And then you go on without really learning, you miss the whole point. You miss the whole, it's the gift is still sitting there in the lesson that you didn't pick it up. You didn't take it with you.
Yes. And sometimes we have to get hit over the head with the same thing until we finally look at it and be like, okay, that's what this is.
Right.
And you know what? Everybody has a different timeline, and it's okay.
Right. Yes. We're all on our own path and with our own clock. And you're right. It's okay. Eventually everybody will get there. It's just a matter of when.
Exactly. Very well said. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us. So I know you have your website, and where can we find you?
You can find me at nowyourlife.com. And if you want to follow me on social media, you can find me on Facebook at Now Your Life, as well as Twitter, as well as Instagram. And the keyword is Now Your Life 23. So if you just put in Now Your Life 23, that's where you can follow me there if you'd like to. I also have a film called Narcissistic that is available on Amazon Prime, as well as a platform called Deku, and I actually just signed a contract with another platform called Revry. Revry and Deku are available on a worldwide basis, and Amazon Video Prime is in certain countries only. And if you want to follow that, you can go to narcissistthemovie.com is the website, and then we also have an Instagram and Twitter and Facebook for that as well. And I also made another movie called Freak, which is a humanistic project that basically tailors around the subject of bullying. And if you want to follow that, you can follow Freak the Film on Facebook, Twitter. I just created an Instagram for that because when I made that film, Instagram didn't exist. And I have an older website, freakthefilm.com.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I saw both of them on my Amazon Prime. So very enlightening. And I know a lot of people have access to that now too. So good. So everybody now knows where they can find your movies and all of your information. And if you find that you would like to work with Eric, I would highly recommend you seek him out, because this is definitely his area of expertise. He's a wonderful coach, and I'm delighted that you took the time to hang out with me today, and hopefully our listeners gained some good information here that's going to help them should they find themselves in this type of a situation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute honor doing the show with you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. I am going to let you go. You have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much, Eric.
You are welcome.
All right, everyone. If you liked what you heard today, I would love it if you are subscribed to the We're Talking Shift podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please do me a solid and give me a rating. You can also find We're Talking Shift on SoundCloud. And if you are trying to make some shift happen in your life and you'd like private coaching with me, then please do contact me either on Facebook or through my website, LoreeBischoff.com. I will talk to you all next week. Stay feisty, my friends, and go make some shift happen. That means you too, Gary V.
The preceding podcast was a TJ DeSantis production. Comments, questions, and inquiries can be directed to DeSantisProd@gmail.com.